to protect my investment in my house. When it comes to apartment buildings that are owned by landlords who don't live in the buildings, the payoff for retrofitting a building is much less obvious. There's no emotional attachment. I guess that's the big difference, right? And so it's a real issue getting apartment buildings retrofitted. Both the city of Berkeley and the city of San Francisco are really trying to tackle this problem with various programs that we'll talk about sort of at the very end of the class. There's now a mandatory retrofit program in San Francisco for apartment buildings, which is a very bold step on the part of the city to force landlords to fix their buildings. But this is a real issue. They're not going to help you find somewhere else to live, that's for sure. Yeah. The school, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. The school dorm, what about it? So the question is, if you're living in a school dorm and it collapses, will you get a shelter? First of all, all of the dorms have been retrofit. They've all been retrofit for life safety. And what that means is it's not supposed to collapse. Okay? So to Berkeley's credit, they have done everything they can to make sure that all of the dormitories are life safe, as in it's not going to collapse. But it may be seriously damaged, and it may get red tagged, and you may not be able to move back into it. And so what happens to you in that circumstance, I have no idea. Yeah? The question is, when your building's red tagged, can you go back in and get your stuff out? I actually don't know the answer to that, but I'll tell you an amusing story. I know somebody who was living in the Marina District when the Loma Prieta earthquake occurred. That's where a lot of these soft-story buildings partially collapsed. He was living in an apartment in one of those soft-story buildings. And so the building partially collapsed. He was fine in the earthquake. Well, he wasn't in the building, that's why he was fine. So the whole area was cordoned off. And then a few days later, they kind of allowed a half-hour window for people to go in and get their stuff. And so, everybody rushes in. They literally have 30 minutes. You have 30 minutes. You can pick what is it you want to carry out. That's it. Whatever you can do in 30 minutes, that's it. And so he's running around getting what he could, and he had sort of 2 bags worth of stuff. And then he had to climb out of the window, because that was the only way into the building. And as he climbed out of the window, his bag sort of spilt over. And what then came flying out of the bag was about 50 tennis balls. So there's a picture in the newspaper of his tennis balls bouncing across the street. And in his 30 minutes, his 50 tennis balls was one of the things he decided to save. He said, not one of his best moments. Okay, any other questions? All right, we should really cover this material. All right. Okay, can you live without the services that you rely on? Okay. Gas stations, the power will be out. As soon as the power's out, you can't pump gas. Never mind about whether there's any gas in the tanks, and even if the power doesn't go out, how long they'll still have gas at the gas station. Water may be in short supply. There's undoubtedly a bunch of the water lines are going to be ruptured, and so there will be a disruption to some of the water supply. Gas and power, garbage and sewage services will be interrupted. Telephone, oh my goodness, internet might be down. Okay? Oh no, sorry, even worse. Cell phone coverage might be down. There'll be no messaging potentially after an earthquake. So I should be joking about this. These are things that we rely on for our day-to-day activity. In this kind of event, there are going to be people out there who want to know where you are and how you're doing. You may not be able to get information out to them. This particular publication mail service may be disrupted or delayed. I'm not sure that's really a concern. Gas, bank operations, having cash. Okay, again, if the power's down, you can't get money out of the ATM. After a certain amount of time, even if there is power, there will be no money in the ATM. You will need money. It'll be the only way to buy anything, like water. Okay, so having some cash on hand is important. Okay, so finally, hopefully this is all good reason to be thinking about the 7 steps to earthquake safety, and your first assignment is to essentially to work on some of these. Okay, step 1. Identify potential hazards in your room and home and begin to fix them. Okay, so this is I really like this one. This is a key myth that quake injuries are from collapsing buildings. In California, that is not the case. Okay, in California, our building stock is in relatively good condition compared to some other earthquake-prone places around the world. And in fact, most of the injuries in past earthquakes in California, and therefore likely in future earthquakes in California, are not due to building collapse or even partial building collapse. They're injuries that are caused in buildings that perhaps are fine and will still be livable after the event, but it's stuff falling off the buildings, the interiors of the buildings, the lights, the ceiling tiles, the panels on the walls, things on your bookcases, your TV, your computer. Most of the injuries are caused by this kind of thing falling over and injuring you. And specifically in the Northridge earthquake, 55% of the earthquake-related injuries were falling objects. Okay? This is also the primary reason that when you feel shaking, you duck, cover, and hold on. You protect yourself from falling debris. I'm not talking about the building, I'm talking about the TV that's mounted on your wall. Okay? And so taking cover under a sturdy table, if everybody was under a sturdy table, we just have halved the number of injuries in an earthquake. Okay? So that's why duck cover, which we'll come to in a moment, that's why duck cover and hold on is very important. Okay, so to illustrate that, I particularly like this video. It's a mock-up building that's been built on a shake table, and then they shook it with the same ground shaking that was observed in the Northridge earthquake in Southern California. And I particularly like this one because this looks to me very much like a typical dorm room, right? There's a bed, there's a bookcase, there's shelves, there's a window. Okay, this is what happened. This is what happens in the Northridge earthquake. Oh. Okay, let me plug in the volume. Sorry, now I've got my... So you can hear I'm not sure it makes that much of a difference, but I think you get the general idea. What are we seeing happening? All right. What are we seeing happening? Okay, a little louder than necessary. My apologies. What do we see happening? Yep. Right. Right. Don't put anything over your bed, okay? So people put shelves over their bed, in this case speakers over the bed. You really shouldn't have anything over your bed. You spend 1/3 of your life in that bed, okay? So that's the one location where you are most likely to be when the earthquake strikes. So don't put heavy objects over your bed. Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting observation. The comment was that it looks like everything is coming into the center, so is it better to stay away at the walls? That's kind of an interesting... Obviously, things can only fall inwards. What we're seeing is all the stuff on this bookcase falling into the center of the room. Obviously, the stuff over here falling into the center of the room. The windows are not breaking. This bookcase doesn't fall over. I actually don't know whether they attached the bookcase to the wall or not. They may well have done that in this particular test. And that's why we're not seeing the bookcase fall over. If you recall, we saw the bookcase fall sort of onto the futon that somebody was sleeping on in the Kobe earthquake. And this one doesn't fall over, but all the stuff falls over. The idea is you need to identify a safe zone in the room that you spend a lot of time in. And so in a dorm room like this, I'm going to guess that the safest place to be is underneath your desk, okay? So that when this stuff is all falling around, it's not falling on your head. It's that simple. Okay? So this is why you have to identify problems in your house or your dorm room or home, whatever, and start to fix them. And what I mean by that is attaching things to, not putting heavy things over places where you spend a lot of time and attaching things to walls. So how do you do that? Don't hang heavy objects over beds or sofas. Okay? That's a pretty obvious thing to be doing. And then when you do have heavier objects, use these closed hooks. They make these special hooks to hang to the pictures, as you can see here. You can buy them in any hardware store in California. And the idea is simply that when the picture starts bouncing up and down, it's much more difficult for the wire to come out of the hook than if it's just a typical hook or a nail in the wall or something like that. So just hanging your pictures up using the appropriate hooks is a very straightforward thing to do. Yeah? How safe are bunk beds? Does anybody sleep in a bunk bed here? I don't really have any comment on this. I don't know the answer to it. And I know that pretty much all of the dorm rooms have bunk beds. Objects on open shelves. Okay, but you know what you do? You don't ask me. I mean, you can ask me and I can't answer the question. You ask whoever's in charge of your residence hall. Okay? If everybody in this room went to talk to whoever's responsible for their residence hall, I don't mean I forget what you call these various people. I don't mean the student that's down the corridor. I mean the RAs, thank you. I mean the person who is actually the person who works for UC Berkeley and is actually responsible for the residence hall. Because they hold some responsibility, potentially even liability, when it comes to what might happen to people living in that building when there's an earthquake. And that's the person you go and ask about the safety, whether it be the bunk beds or some other aspect of the safety of the building that you're in. Half of the issue here is, this is the scenario where you have a landlord and you have to motivate the landlord to care. To Berkeley's credit, every building has been retrofitted in some cases multiple times for life safety. But still, I don't think there is any harm in making sure that the people responsible for your residence hall are aware of the earthquake issue. Okay, objects on shelves and tabletops. Of course, you want to put heavy items close to the floor, and then other things you can use what's called museum wax, quake gel, it's called, putty, to basically stick them to the shelf so that they're less likely to fall off. This is not so you can then go and put this shelf over your bed. You don't put anything over your bed. Okay? This is in other places around the house, the apartment, whatever. And then furniture, home electronics, big TVs, things like that, heavy things, needs to be attached to the wall. And you can buy all kinds of devices, these furniture straps, to attach heavy furniture to the wall. And this is to stop that bookcase from falling over. Bookcase falling on you can kill you. Okay? So you want to stop that bookcase from falling over. We saw one of the bookcases falling over in that Kobe example. Okay? Just stick your hand up if you have questions, otherwise I'm going to keep going. Okay, water and gas pipes. I mean, this is a very serious problem, and we know it's very serious because there's actually legislation that tries to deal with this to some degree. And this is because of the risk of broken gas pipes and fires following earthquakes. We haven't talked about the San Francisco earthquake, the 1906 earthquake in detail yet, but of course, as much damage, at least as much damage in that earthquake was done by the fire as by the shaking itself. And people think, oh, that was 100 years ago. That's irrelevant today. It is not irrelevant today. One man who had a little campfire in the Oakland Hills in 1991, and that campfire got away from his little fire pit, and he burned down, I think was it 20,000 homes? I'm blanking on the number. If somebody knows the right number, please correct me. Say again? Oh, 3,000, thank you. It burnt down 3,000 homes, okay? When fire gets, the fire departments can handle a fixed number of fires, Pretty straightforward. How many fire trucks do they have, right? That's the number of fires that they can handle as a maximum. As soon as you have one more fire, you're not sending a fire truck to it, okay? And that one fire then spreads to the next house and the next house and the next house, and you have a sort of catastrophic cascading failure situation. So the fire following earthquakes can be a real issue. So as a result, all water heaters now have to be braced and attached to the framing of the house, as is shown here, and have a flexible gas connector. And in fact, the law now says that whenever anybody builds a home, they can't make people do it in their current home. Whenever anybody buys a home, not builds a home, whenever anybody buys a home, that water heater has to be strapped. So over a period of time, all water heaters will be strapped, and that will significantly reduce the number of fires because this water heater falling over, rupturing the gas pipe, has been a significant source of gas leaks in previous earthquakes. Okay? All right, that was step one. Look around your environment, identify the hazards, and start to reduce them, okay? Don't be overwhelmed by the fact that there's a gazillion things that you feel like you should probably do. Do something, all right? And if you get into a mode where this becomes an annual event, this is Emergency Preparedness Month, in case you didn't know. September is Emergency Preparedness Month. KQED hands out emergency preparedness kits as part of their radio drive in September of every year because it's Emergency Preparedness Month. So this is the kind of thing where if you just chip away at this a little bit every single year, it makes a big difference. Okay, step two, create a disaster preparedness plan. Okay, so what are the components of a disaster preparedness plan? The first place is to identify a safe place to meet near your home after the shaking stops. And of course, you have to think about, these are guidelines. I'm taking these guidelines out of those two brochures. And these are sort of general guidelines aimed more specifically at homeowners and not particularly tailored to a student audience. So you have to think about what this really means for you in your dorm or your apartment building situation. So you need to identify a place where you're going to meet whoever it is you are going to need to meet up with after the event. And then identify a second place that is outside of your neighborhood in case the neighborhood is evacuated. If one of those fires that gets out of control is in your neighborhood, they will just block off the entire neighborhood and you will not be allowed in. Okay? So you need a second place to meet, second safe place to meet that is away from where you live. Okay? Then you need to come back more into your home, your apartment, whatever, and we've already talked about this a little bit, but identify safe spots in your home where you go when the shaking starts. So in your dorm room, it's almost certainly underneath your desk. Okay? Any of the places that you spend a significant chunk of time, and that includes this room because you spend 2 hours here every week, you should know exactly what you're going to do in that space if an earthquake occurs. And what is it you will do if an earthquake occurs right now? Duck cover and hold on. What does that mean specifically? Get under the chairs and, thank you, and stay until the shaking has stopped. Right? Not knowing the answer to that question is a failing grade. Okay? All right. So you identify these places that are the safe places to go in the rooms that you spend time in on a regular basis. Designate a friend or a neighbor's house, apartment, as a secondary place to meet up with. This is sort of more aimed at children. Sure, everybody should have smoke alarms in their house. And then identify an out-of-town contact that can be a source of information for you, your family, your friends after an earthquake. The ability to call is going to be severely limited. Okay? Everybody's going to be picking up the phone trying to make a call. It can actually be easier to get information to a third party away from the disaster. Okay? So a friend on the East Coast, a friend not in California, that's the emergency contact point. And so if everybody in the disaster zone, everybody in the Bay Area is all letting somebody on the East Coast know that they're okay, and that person then can relay that information to the other people. So that's the idea of a point of contact that is outside of the area that you're living in. Yeah? Okay, so the comment was, I already said that you can't really walk when the shaking's going on, so how far away can a safe spot be? It cannot be very far away. It needs to be in the same room. So you need to identify what's the safest place to be in each room that you spend any significant time in. That's exactly right. Yeah, you are not going to be able to walk from one end of your house to the other end of the house during the shaking. That's absolutely right. Okay, And then learn some life-saving actions. Take a first aid class, CPR class. Know where the fire extinguisher is in the buildings that you spend time. Learn how to turn off utilities, electricity, water, and gas. And know when to turn them off. You don't just turn everything off when there's an earthquake. You only turn off the gas if you think there's a leak, if you can smell gas. Okay? Don't turn off the gas if there's no evidence of a leak, because it will take you weeks to get it turned back on. Okay? So you only turn off the gas if there's evidence of a leak. But obviously, if there's evidence of a leak, you turn it off. Same for water and electricity. Okay? And then they have these what are called CERT teams, community emergency response teams. In many communities, they have them in Berkeley, I know. But that's a great way to kind of then reach slightly outside of your immediate surroundings. If you're living, in some suburb somewhere, I don't mean now in Berkeley, then you're going to be on your own as a community. And so even if you have all of the water supplies for yourself, your neighbors are going to be looking for some help if they don't have the supplies. So being part of this CERT team and trying to help your community be ready for events is very important. Okay, stay informed. Learn the disaster plan at your workplace. Find out what the disaster plan is in your dorm. Give your family members this emergency contact information. There's no point if you're the only one who knows how to do it. Have a regular practice. It says twice a year here. I think best we can realistically hope for is everybody thinks about this once per year, and the Emergency Preparedness Month is the time to do it. Okay, step 3 is to prepare a disaster kit. Okay, I'm going to go through the rest very quickly. So the disaster kit has some basic items. Oops, whoa, I didn't mean that quickly. Drinking water, first aid, lighting, a hand cranked or battery operated radio, and now you can get these that have a USB plug, so not only can you crank it to make the radio work, but you can crank it to make your cell phone work. Very important. Canned food, packaged food, items to protect you from the element, clothing, work gloves, protective goggles when you don't have, if you have to try, somebody's trapped in a building and you need to try and help them get out, and various other things. You can work your way through these lists, and I want you to work your way through these lists as part of assignment 1. So that, you can have one kit that's at home that can be quite sizable. People talk about the kit at home having enough stuff in it for you to survive for 2 weeks. That's a lot of stuff. Okay? But that's the home. And then a to-go kit. A lot of people who think about this, they have a backpack that's permanently in the trunk of their car, so that they have some level of supplies with them wherever they may be. So that's the idea of a to-go kit. I love this picture. But there's a serious message behind it. If there's an earthquake in the middle of the night, like the Napa quake, when the shaking stops, the lights may well be out and there may be glass everywhere. What do you do next? Okay? And so this is why having a pair of shoes and a flashlight under your bed is important. Don't forget that it's going to shake and things are going to be thrown all over the place, and so tying it to the foot of the bed is a great thing to think about. Okay, number 4, identify your building's potential weaknesses. I mean, this is now becoming a much more serious undertaking. We do have good building codes in California, I keep saying that, but building codes are not retroactive. Building codes only apply to new buildings, okay? And so if you're in an older building, you should not be thinking that your building is earthquake safe. It is not. We'll come back to this in the final third of the class. There are some key dates when building codes were significantly improved. And when you're thinking about where you want to live and work, if a building was built after these key dates, it is much safer than the building that was built 1 or 2 years earlier, okay? This is one simple way of trying to get a sense of whether you need to worry about this in your home, or this is something you can pass on to your family so they can think about their home. Here's some of those key dates. So before 1960, there was a big change in 1960. So 1961 to 1978 is better than pre-1960. After 1978 is even better. Okay, there was also a big improvement in 1995. All right, so knowing when these, and we'll talk about this in more detail in the final third of the class, but knowing when these breakpoints are in the building codes and knowing where your building falls in that is very important. And then also, of course, the type of structure matters, and the slope that you're on matters. Okay, so this is a very nice, very simple way of trying to get some assessment of whether you should be concerned about earthquake safety for your building. If you live in a condominium, talk to your landlord about it. When you move to a new apartment building, think about this. I know there are many factors when it comes to choosing where you're going to live next year. Most importantly, perhaps, where your friends are planning on living. But think about this. Try and factor this in and avoid soft-story buildings. We'll be talking about that a lot. You can ask your landlord what measures have been taken to ensure seismic safety. Just as you're out looking for apartments, if you ask every landlord that question, you are increasing the pressure on that landlord to do something about it. Okay? Don't underestimate the value of just asking people awkward questions about earthquake safety. Okay? You can ask about the water heaters being strapped, and you can ask about being able to attach your furniture to the walls. Okay? Step 5, protect yourself during an earthquake. This is the duck, cover, and hold on scenario, and this is why. So as valuable as this video is for educational purposes, do not start getting out your video camera when the earthquake starts. Sorry, let me stop this. Okay. You can see what happened. It looks like his bookcase was attached to the wall. That's why it didn't fall over. But it gives you a sense. This is actually the tsunami warning coming in for this earthquake. But it gives you a sense of the kind of shaking to expect, and why it's important to get under a sturdy table so all of this stuff does not fall on top of you. Okay. You can see some pretty proper photos. Okay. So this is why you drop, cover, and hold on. Okay. So getting down is about staying stationary and not being thrown across the room. Taking cover is so that stuff does not fall on your head. And holding on is because when the shaking continues, the table you are under may well bounce its way away from you. Okay. So the duck, cover, and hold on is about getting to a safe zone and staying in that safe zone until the shaking stops. Do not stand in doorways. Do not run outside. Move away from exterior walls and windows.